I should have known better than to take this goddamn case. But when Sheriff Gunderson called me up last month, practically begging for help, I couldn't say no. Not after what happened last time. So I packed up my meager belongings, threw them in the trunk of my beat-up Chevy, and made the long drive up to Redwood Falls. As I cruised down Main Street, past boarded-up storefronts and weather-beaten houses, I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the damp fog rolling in off the Pacific. This town was dying, slowly but surely, like so many others I'd seen. The kind of place where hope comes to shrivel up and rot. I pulled into the gravel lot of the Redwood Inn, a sagging two-story motel that had seen better days. The neon vacancy sign flickered weakly in the gray afternoon light. Christ, what I wouldn't give for a drink right about now. But I'd been sober for 8 months, 3 days, and I checked my watch. 16 hours, one day at a time, right? The motel clerk barely looked up from her dog-eared romance novel as I approached the front desk. Her eyes were sunken, skin sallow. "Room for one," I grunted, sliding over my credit card. "Passing through?" she asked in a bored monotone. I shook my head. "Here on business. Not sure how long." She raised an eyebrow at that, a spark of curiosity briefly lighting her dull eyes. "You're him, aren't you? The detective the sheriff called in about the incidents?" I nodded curtly, not in the mood for small talk. She handed over a key attached to a tacky plastic keychain shaped like a redwood tree. "Room 13. Watch yourself out there. Strange things in these woods." I lugged my duffel bag up the creaky stairs, wincing at the musty smell that permeated the hallway. Room 13 was about what I expected. Faded floral wallpaper, lumpy mattress, ancient TV that probably only got 3 channels on a good day. I tossed my bag on the bed and fished out the case file Gunderson had sent over. Time to see what I was dealing with. The first report came in about 2 months ago. A couple of hikers spotted what they described as a giant, hair-covered creature near Coyote Creek. They managed to snap a blurry photo that could have been Bigfoot, or a bear, or some joker in a costume. Pretty standard stuff. But then the sightings kept coming. A group of campers heard strange howls in the night and found their cooler torn to shreds. Massive, unidentifiable footprints appeared in people's backyards. Pets started going missing. And then they found the bodies. The first was a logger named Bill Haskins. What was left of him, anyway. The official report said animal attack, but the photos told a different story. No bear or mountain lion could do that kind of damage. The body had been torn limb from limb, organs missing, skull crushed like an eggshell. 2 more deaths followed in quick succession. Sarah Chen, a grad student doing research on owl populations. Marcus Whitaker, a retiree who liked to fish up at Lake Redemption. Both found in similar condition to Haskins. Gunderson was out of his depth, and the locals were in a panic. That's where I came in. I sighed, rubbing my temples. This was going to be a long night. I needed coffee, and lots of it. The diner across the street was nearly empty when I walked in, just a couple of old-timers nursing cups of coffee at the counter. A bell jingled as I pushed open the door, and the waitress looked up from wiping down a table. She was young, maybe early 20s, with tired eyes that spoke of too many long shifts and not enough sleep. "Sit anywhere you like," she said, gesturing vaguely at the empty booths. I slid into one near the window, gazing out at the fog-shrouded street. The waitress ambled over, notepad in hand. Her name tag read Jenny. "What can I get you?" she asked, stifling a yawn. "Coffee black. And keep it coming." She nodded and shuffled off. I turned my attention back to the case file, spreading the photos across the sticky tabletop. The images were gruesome, to say the least. I'd seen my share of violent crime scenes over the years, but this was something else entirely. The victims hadn't just been killed, they'd been savaged, torn apart with inhuman strength and ferocity. Jenny returned with my coffee, eyes widening as she caught sight of the photos. "Oh God," she whispered, going pale. "Is that?" I quickly gathered up the pictures, stuffing them back in the folder. "Sorry about that. Police business." She set down my mug with trembling hands. "You're here about the killings, aren't you? The thing in the woods?" I nodded, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. "What can you tell me about it?" Jenny glanced around nervously, then slid into the booth across from me. "I saw it," she said in a hushed voice. "About a week ago when I was driving home late after my shift. It was just standing there at the edge of the trees, watching me. Must have been 8, 9 feet tall. And its eyes," she shuddered. "They glowed red in my headlights, like something out of a nightmare." I leaned forward, intrigued. "Did you report this to the sheriff?" She shook her head. "What's the point? Nobody believes us anyway. They think we're all going crazy or something." Jenny's voice dropped even lower. "But that's not the worst part. Sometimes at night, I hear it calling. It sounds just like my little brother Tommy. But Tommy's been dead for 5 years." A chill ran down my spine. "It mimics human voices?" Jenny nodded, eyes wide with fear. "Please, you have to do something. Before anyone else dies." I reached across the table, patting her hand awkwardly. Comfort was never my strong suit. "I'll do what I can. Thank you for telling me." As I paid my bill and headed back out into the gloomy evening, my mind was racing. If even half of what Jenny said was true, we were dealing with something far more dangerous than a rogue bear or deranged killer. Something that shouldn't exist. The rational part of my brain rebelled against the idea. There had to be a logical explanation. But after everything I'd seen in my years on the force, I'd learned that reality is often stranger and more terrifying than we'd like to believe. I spent the next few days interviewing witnesses, combing through evidence, and trudging through miles of dense, shadowy forest. The more I dug, the more unsettling the picture became. This wasn't just a series of random animal attacks. There was a pattern, a frightening intelligence behind the killings. And always, that nagging sense of being watched. Malevolent eyes boring into me from just beyond the tree line. On the 4th night, I jolted awake in my dingy motel room, heart pounding. Something had woken me, a sound just on the edge of hearing. I lay still, straining my ears. There it was again. A voice calling from somewhere in the darkness outside. "Jack, help me, Jack." I froze, ice flooding my veins. That voice. I knew that voice. It was Sarah, my partner, the one I'd failed to save all those years ago. But that was impossible. Sarah was dead, her body found in a ditch outside Chicago, victim of the serial killer we'd been hunting. The case that had broken me, sent me spiraling into the bottle and out of the force. "Jack, please, I'm scared." The voice was closer now, just outside my window. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, that this was a trap. But some primal part of my brain had taken over, driven by guilt and a desperate, irrational hope. Before I knew what I was doing, I was out of bed, fumbling for my gun and flashlight. I threw open the door and stumbled out into the fog-shrouded parking lot, heart hammering in my chest. "Sarah," I called, my voice hoarse. "Where are you?" A rustle of movement caught my attention. A shadowy figure stood at the edge of the woods across the street, half hidden by the trees. It was roughly human-shaped, but far too tall, too broad. "Jack," the voice came again, but this time it was different. Distorted, as if multiple voices were layered on top of each other. "Come to me, Jack." I raised my gun with trembling hands, flicking on the flashlight. The beam cut through the mist, illuminating the thing that stood watching me. "Oh, Jesus. Oh, sweet Jesus, no." It was massive, at least 9 feet tall, covered in matted brown fur. But that wasn't the worst part. Its face, dear God, its face. It was like someone had tried to mold human features out of clay, but given up halfway through. The proportions were all wrong, grotesque parodies of eyes and mouth stretched across misshapen bone. And its eyes, they glowed a hellish red in the beam of my flashlight, filled with a terrible intelligence. I stumbled backward, nearly falling as my legs threatened to give out. The creature took a step forward, its massive frame moving with a fluidity that shouldn't have been possible. "What's wrong, Jack?" it said, and now the voice was a twisted mixture of Sarah's and something infinitely older, colder. "Don't you want to see your old partner again?" A scream built in my throat as the thing lunged forward with impossible speed. I turned and ran, blind panic driving me into the woods. Branches whipped at my face as I crashed through the underbrush, the sound of heavy footfalls close behind. I ran until my lungs burned, until spots danced in front of my eyes. But no matter how fast I moved, I could hear it right behind me, toying with me, letting me think I might escape, only to dash that hope with another inhuman roar. Finally, my foot caught on a root and I went down hard, tumbling down a steep embankment. I came to a stop at the bottom, dazed and bleeding. As I struggled to my feet, I realized with horror where I was. The old redwood mine, abandoned decades ago after a cave-in killed a dozen workers. Locals said it was haunted. Right now, that seemed like the least of my worries. I could hear the creature crashing through the trees above. With no other choice, I stumbled into the yawning black maw of the mine entrance. The darkness swallowed me whole as I moved deeper into the tunnels, using my flashlight sparingly to conserve the batteries. The air grew thick and stale, heavy with the scent of decay. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, the sound echoing off the rock walls. I don't know how long I wandered those twisting passages, jumping at every shadow, every skitter of unseen things in the dark. Hours, maybe. My sense of time had become as warped as these tunnels. And then I heard it. That awful, multi-layered voice, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Did you really think you could hide from me, Jack? I've been waiting so long for you to come. We have so much to talk about." I whirled around, gun raised, but there was nothing there. Just more darkness, more twisting tunnels. "Why me?" I croaked, my voice raw with fear and exhaustion. "What do you want?" A low chuckle reverberated through the mine, sending loose pebbles skittering across the ground. "Oh, Jack, sweet, broken Jack, I want what I've always wanted, to feed, to grow stronger, and you, my friend, are going to help me do that." The voice was closer now, coming from just around the next bend. I steeled myself, knowing I was out of options. It was time to face this thing, whatever it was.